bringing back Flip That Truck. If you guys remember, I've done this series a couple of times before, and the premise was that I started with a truck and tried to work my way up as I went. There was a problem with that though, is that it can be pretty hard to find the next vehicle to go with, because to fit into the series, it kind of needs to be the right buy. And that made for some pretty big gaps in the content and just made it hard to keep continuing on. So this time what we're doing is we're starting with a stable of vehicles for this show. Now, some of these trucks have been around here for a while, but unless you watch the live shows, you probably haven't seen most of them, or maybe any of them. The trucks that I have here in front of me run a pretty wide spectrum, from the initial cost range to the level of completeness to parts quality. There's just a lot to choose from here, and I think that it's going to give me a better way to get this series rolling. Now, the whole point of this series was to buy trucks, take what I've acquired and try and put the minimal amount of investment back into them while still maximizing what I think I could get for them when I was going to sell them. For example, if I have a chassis here of a fairly original SCX1, putting a $70 body on a truck that isn't necessarily worth a ton doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But buying a couple $100s worth of parts for a truck that could end up being worth a couple $1,000s may be worth it. So that's the whole point. So you're gonna see a pretty wide variety of approaches, even with just these vehicles, and as I acquire more, as I try and keep this series going, until I end up with the one that I don't think can leave. And that is when we'll say that season is complete. And then we'll have to start it all over again. But before I get into showing you all of the details about the vehicles we have here, a quick moment from today's video sponsor. Reduce your bulky wallet with one of the Ridge wallets. These hold up to a dozen cards, have a cash strap or money clip option, and come in a ton of different styles. I've been carrying the Forged Ember version, and I've got the matching key case. Helps keep my pockets nice and organized. Come in a ton of different styles. I also have the burnt titanium and kind of a standard forged carbon fiber version. You can also get tons of different anodized aluminum ones. Check out Ridge Wallet at the link in the video description below. You can also use the code Harley10 to save 10% off of your order. Thanks again to Ridge Wallet for sponsoring this portion of today's video. So let's start with showing you these trucks in ascending order of the amount that it took for me to pick them up. Now, the first one is going to be this Jeep chassis body setup here. Now, this one actually I have $0 into. This came from Dan out of the Bay Area, and he actually just gave me this setup a while back. Now, I do not take donated parts for these projects. That's like kind of the whole point of it. But this was like going to be a great truck to kind of start with. He said he had it in his garage, and he made it happen. I couldn't resist. And this is a custom Jeep hard body. I think it used to be a regular full cab or something like that, but there's some custom hard body work back here. And there's this really nice cage work that was done. I believe that was done by Wordy Made, if I'm not mistaken. Now, it also has a nice bumper in the rear and some nice metal sliders as well. It's on an SCX10 chassis, and it's magnetic mounted. Actually takes a good bit of force. You can see that the custom body work that was done in there. It's wired for some LEDs in the rear, but that's the body. The chassis underneath also kind of special, because while it is just an SCX10-1 chassis, it's got some mismatched links on it. Okay, whatever, no big deal. But it's got the Vanquish original shock towers on it, which are really nice pieces, and they're worth a good bit of money. I didn't know that it had that. I had no idea what to expect when this thing showed up. Secondly, it's also got a very first edition of the Vanquish transmission case with the bubble sticker, which is also a really nice piece. It's got the original AX10 slotted motor plate, which these were only originally found on the AX10, the crawler from back in the day. And this motor plate was later done and changed to a solid one, but this is an original piece and kind of cool to see. Haven't seen one in a long time. I can tell the internals have been upgraded because if the outputs matched this motor plate, it would have been the aluminum one with no through hole through it, which this indeed does have. So not completely stock inside, but definitely the parts that you want to see changed are changed. As far as what's inside the transmission, we'll have to find that out later. But that's all we have for this one. And again, I don't have any money into this, which is pretty nice for the parts that I discovered that were on there. Now, putting this to the side and grabbing this guy here. Now, this is an original SCX-10 as well. Now, you will see that currently this has these method roosts on here. And I really bought this truck for those wheels because the wheels are worth a lot of money. So these wheels are getting sold separately. By the time you're seeing this video, these wheels are probably already gone. And I think that makes the most sense because these wheels are probably more than the value of the rest of this truck, and it makes the most sense to split that up, which isn't something I normally do, but special case here. Now, beyond that, the rest of this is an upgraded original SCX-10. It doesn't have the upgraded shock towers like the other one does. It does, however, have an upgraded SCX-10 transmission case. It's one of the Vanquish V1s, so that's nice to see. It's got a 7955 servo, I believe, Sidewinder 3, RC four-wheel drive 35-turn brushed motor. Pretty basic stuff there. There's a BEC inside of the old school style receiver box. A couple of other nice things is that it has the Vanquish chassis mounted servo kit on here. This is SCX-10-1 or original SCX-10 axles, but it is converted to 3-link with that full VP kit. Now it's got a Vanquish Stage 1 kit with knuckles, C-hubs, and rear lockouts. It also has Vanquish VVDs and titanium links all the way around. It's got the original universal style drive shafts, and it does have the Proline scalar shocks. So some nice parts on here. It's original SCX-10, so it's not going to be worth nearly as much as the newer generation stuff. But I'm about $150 into this truck after the wheels have already left. So I'm thinking I may be able to combine this and this to end up making one package that's got a lot of really good stuff on it and be in a pretty good place to try and get this towards a completed unit. So we started at free $99, then we went to $150. Our next truck is this VS410 Pro. This truck is what is known as the Flex Seal VS410. I was on an airplane to fly to Arizona. I got a text from my buddy Ben. He said, check this out. And this truck was for sale for $500. Now, when it was initially for sale, it didn't have these wheels on it. It had some kind of knockoff wheels and smaller tires. The body looked about like what you see here. There were some other pieces missing, but the most critical part of the entire thing was the fact that it said in the ad, axles have been flex sealed. And it meant exactly that. The axles that came underneath of this truck had been absolutely coated in Flex Seal. It was ridiculous. Now, I used this for a live video. I unboxed it and we got into it. And it didn't stop. Just one thing after another kept being discovered as far as what was wrong with this truck. Okay. So here are the axles. Now, I can't tell if they've been ground on or...
Is that baling wire?
I think so.
Is it?
It's, yeah. Oh, yeah, and then here was there's a hole in the top of the transmission that's been drilled there for some reason.
He gave the transmission a lobotomy.
That's not right. Now, these links here at the skid plate are on the bottom, but at the axle, they're going to the top. There's a great big washer in here.
What? There is friggin' Flex Seal coming off everywhere.
It's molting. I did not try to negotiate the price in the slightest, and I should have. That is not an end cap for a Vanquish axle. This is...
No way.
It's a plastic cap off something. Okay. Oh, there's so much rust in here. Now, as you see it here, I've already fixed almost everything about this. It took a ton of work to get these axles stripped down to nothing. They've been ground on, so they were like smoothed and then they were flex sealed. So they've lost some of the detail. It's a very interesting build. But I've done a lot of fixing, a lot of work to get this thing looking much more presentable. It's not 100% yet. I still need to do a couple little checks. There's a couple other little pieces here and there that it could use. But the initial investment into this truck was $500. Now, it's got nice electronics in it. It's got an AX system. It's got a 370 TBL steering servo. It's got a Spectrum receiver in there, I believe. There's just more to tell. And we'll get into that. But if you want an entertaining live stream to watch, the unboxing and discovery of everything wrong with this truck was something to witness. So I'll link that in the description below. So going from the $500 truck to the next one in our lineup, this is a custom hard-bodied Class 2 ready vehicle. This is a Toyota LC70 body that's been dovetailed, which is kind of this narrowing of the rear of the bed, and pinched, which is the same thing in the front. Now, this is again, focused on Class 2 competition. It is ugly. I mean, this paint job is absolutely hideous. But underneath, we've got a carbon fiber chassis, and I believe that this is from Classy Cut Customs, from what I remember that I was told. Again, carbon fiber chassis. It's got big bore style shocks with the mini T springs on there. They've been spray painted, which looks pretty bad. It's got a really ugly interior, but it meets the rules of the scale world. So that's why they're there, but it's terribly ugly. It's got firewood hot glued to a seat. I mean, it just kind of pivots. It's got AR44 axles under it with stock wild bore style drive shafts. As far as the gearing that's in it, I don't 100% know because, well, the front has no gearing. There's no ring gear or locker or something in there. I can spin these front stubs and it doesn't spin the drive shaft. I can tell it has a pinion, but that doesn't really help me. In the middle, it does have a transmission that I believe is also from Classy Cut Customs and some sort of like maybe overdrive box on the back. It's a separate unit. Now the motor is a really nice Holmes Hobbies Polar 400. Really nice brushed motor. Pretty expensive unit there. And then it's got a Holmes direct power servo and it's got a servo winch. I'm not 100% sure what works and what doesn't in here. I was told that there was electrical issues the last time this was run. So I don't know the status of how this vehicle runs. It didn't come with wheels and tires. It obviously doesn't have the gear sets in there. It has Dean's plugs on it, which I don't have any Dean's batteries anymore. So I haven't even tried to plug this thing in. There's no receiver. I have work to do to figure out what this, how this is going to go. We've got, some basic styrene inner fenders. It does have a metal bumper at the front and the rear. It's got, a metal roll bar in the back to get points. A dash. It meets scale comp rules, which was definitely the goal of this. I think that's very clear. But this is likely a competitive truck. It's just very minimal and very, very ugly. So with some cleanup, this could be both a competitive truck and something that doesn't look so thrown together. Oh, it also has a Holmes BR Mini under there, which I don't think I remembered. It's like a gift to myself. Now for this truck with all of those electronics, no wheels and tires, I paid $680. So not cheap, but there is a lot of nice stuff in there and it doesn't need that much, assuming I can figure out what's going on with the electronics situation. The electronics that are in here are worth a really big chunk of what just the dollar value is that I paid for this truck. So getting that figured out, putting some wheels and tires on this thing could turn this thing into a pretty nice truck. $680 here, we only have one left, and that is this guy behind us. Now this I've been referring to as the Bouncer Jeep for a while. It's made an appearance on the live shows, but that's about it. When I bought it, it was more complete than you see here. It had axles, shocks, drive lines, all of that. Basically, it was missing wheels, tires, and electronics. But pretty much everything else that was on this, other than the chassis, was pretty poor quality. The chassis itself is really well made. I like the chassis the most about it. It's got a hard body that's been modified to fit on here that looks like a Jeep, thus the name. But it needs a lot of work to get it back into a condition that is reasonable. The body work just needs to be sanded and smoothed, filled to make it look right. It's got some custom side panels that fit to the chassis as well, and they're just trashed. They're just in really bad shape. Now, the drivetrain that fits in this currently is this RC four-wheel drive scale engine, transmission, and a GCM transfer case. And that will stay. That is going to stay. It's built around that setup. It just, the mounts and everything, which are nice and nicely done. So I have no problem with that. But the cage is rough as far as it's been beat on, which is to be expected. However, I want to get this thing into, as top quality as I can, because this thing has the biggest chance of being worth the most. However, there's some oddities about it, like the body panel nuts are 632, which means that you end up using huge screw heads. So to get this thing cleaned up and be able to fix some of these things like the body nuts, I'm gonna have to have this chassis completely stripped of the powder coating, and powder coating is a much bigger pain to strip than paint. So I'm gonna have to get it to somebody to have that properly stripped. I obviously want to have that done locally so that I don't have to do a bunch of shipping back and forth. This one is by far going to be the biggest project of any of them that you've seen so far. This one's going to take some actual work. I'm going to have to do some actual fabrication by welding a lot more body panel nuts on this, and we're likely going to have to redo a number of the components for like the interior, the body work, and then we have to put a decent set of axles under this to make this truck worth the cash, because the Amazon special ones that were on it were basically junk. Now for the price. What you see here is basically the portion of the purchase that was worth anything, and I have $1,000 into this purchase. So it's gonna take some work to get this recouped, to make my money back and make money on all of the work that I'm gonna have to put into it. I'm gonna have to get creative. So my plan for the series is to try and bring you guys an episode each week, whether it's just getting some work done on one of the particular vehicles or doing a kind of deeper dive into a finished vehicle before it goes up for sale. All of the vehicles that you see here will be listed for sale on my website, which is harleydesigns.com. There's a for sale section, and in there, you'll see the vehicles that are ready to be purchased. If they're not listed in there, they're not ready to be sold yet. I'm not interested in selling them for just what I have in them, obviously. I'm being transparent as far as what I've paid and what I'll put into them, but I'm still going to make money in the end. That is I hope to make money in the end. Whether or not it always happens, like with this one here, hard to say. It's going to be pretty interesting, but I really do enjoy this. I buy a lot of RC cars that you guys never see on the channel. I do it all the time. I'm always looking for what's for sale, always looking for a deal. And speaking of that, if you do have something you're looking to sell, you can also message me through my website and let me know what you've got. Don't be offended if I pass. It usually has to be a pretty good deal or something pretty unique for me to really jump into them. So keep that in mind. But that's gonna do it for the intro to season 3 of Flip That Truck. You'll have to let me know which one of these vehicles you'd like to see worked on or completed first. There's a decent amount of work to do with some of them. Some are much closer to being completed already, and some are likely weeks or months away from being completed. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thanks for watching this episode of Flip That Truck. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this one. Subscribe if you're not already. Hit the notification bell so you see every episode of Flip That Truck as soon as it gets uploaded. As always, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.